Welcome back. You're watching CNN. I'm Brooke Baldwin. The question, who is responsible for the chemical attack in Syria that poisoned and killed entire families, mothers, and children? For President Trump, who launched retaliatory missile strikes against a Syrian government air base, the answer is clear. It's the president of Syria, Bashar al-Assad. But for Democratic Congresswoman Tulsi Gabbard, who recently met with Assad in Damascus, there is no proof. Listen to what she told Wolf Blitzer.
If President Assad is found to be responsible after an independent investigation for these horrific chemical weapons attacks, I'll be the first one to denounce him, to call him a war criminal, and to call for his prosecution, the International Criminal Court. Make sure that those consequences are there. But the key is now, with President Trump's reckless military strikes last night, it flew directly in the face of the action that the UN was working on at that time, to launch an independent investigation, to find out exactly what the facts are, who was involved and who was responsible. So yes, I'm skeptical, because we have to take at a premium the cost of these wars, not only on the Syrian people and the people in the Middle East, but the cost of these wars here in the United States.
And now you have Democrats who are calling on Congresswoman Gabbard to leave office because of what she said. Former Democratic National Committee Chairman Howard Dean tweeting, quote, "This is a disgrace. Gabbard should not be in Congress." I've got Jonathan Ticini with me, Democratic strategist and former Bernie Sanders supporter. Also, Basil Smikle, Executive Director at the New York State Democratic Party. So, gentlemen, good to see both of you.
Good to see you. Good to see you.
Jonathan Ticini, first to you. You agree with the Congresswoman, I mean, correct? You
Yes,
see her side.
Yes, and I think she has taken a very judicious position, and I compliment her to be under, quote, metaphorically under fire in this environment, to say, let's look at the facts. And I wish you'd put up on the screen, I have her full statement here, and the only thing I actually disagree with the statement was she actually called for the execution of Assad if he is in fact found guilty by the International Criminal Court. The ICC doesn't execute people, they turn people over to the host countries who do what they will do.
Right.
But since this is the opening of baseball season here at Yankee Stadium, it feels like deja vu all over again. And I think what Congresswoman Gabbard is saying is, let's wait for the facts. And she, I think, harkens back to the Iraq War.
That's exactly right. She says, where was the evidence?
There was no
Saddam
evidence.
Hussein, weapons of mass destruction, evidence first.
We rushed to war. Tens of thousands of people were killed. Trillions of dollars were spent. And ISIS was created, among many things that happened.
Basil, what do you make of that
war.
point? Evidence first, consequences later.
Yeah, but we've been seeing the effect of what Assad is doing to his people for 6 years now. So I think the American people have seen enough images, and I think Donald Trump, and I understand where Jonathan's coming from and the Congresswoman's coming from, that there may be this may be a knee-jerk reaction, or B, some kind of way to distract from other issues that were going on in the White House at the time. But we've all seen these images, and I think what I would have liked her to say is to reframe this conversation. Actually, we have the Secretary of State on his way to Russia. He's not meeting with Putin, but he is on his way to Russia. How is he going to hold Russia accountable? And I think that's where I think Democrats, and in particular, someone who has been affected by this, to hold the line.
Do you doubt the evidence?
I'm not an expert. I was not on the ground there. And I think that, slight disagreement with my friend Basil, if this had been an attack saying over the last 6 years, Assad has been a brutal dictator, he's slaughtered tens of thousands of people, that'd be one thing. But this was a very targeted thing about this one incident. We'll put aside for a moment that it was completely useless and not strategic, and from a military standpoint, kind of a joke. They basically threw 50 Tomahawk missiles and bounced them up.
20% degraded, according to Mattis, is not nothing.
But let's
I think
be honest.
the U.S. government would argue.
Let's be honest. It was, to use the terminology, it wagged the dog. It was an attempt to divert, as Basil said, attention from what's happening domestically, Donald Trump's failure at many, many levels, the healthcare debate, and so on. And we don't know the evidence. So as Congresswoman Gabbard, again, in her statement, was very clear. She said, if President Assad is indeed guilty of this horrible chemical attack on innocent civilians, I will be the first to call for his prosecution, and then she said execution by the ICC.
The Pentagon points to evidence. Granted, we're not on the inside. We wouldn't know to be able to decide. I don't know how much the Congresswoman would know. I know she's a veteran and sees things as a member of Congress we wouldn't. When it happened in 2013 with 1,400 people being killed, absolutely the Obama administration said, yes, indeed, it was Assad. Go ahead.
That's exactly right. And interestingly enough, there were concerns at that time as to whether or not the president should actually take action here. He pulled back a little bit, went to Congress. Congress denied, but it was actually Vladimir Putin who essentially created the agreement for Assad to back down on the use of chemical weapons. That's what needs to get revisited now, number one. It'll be interesting to see the relationship that the president has with Putin on this particular issue going forward. But that's where I think Congresswoman Gabbard could be really instrumental in Congress to say, look, if you're going to go in, if you believe this evidence to be true, and you're going to go in, at least let Congress dictate how you do this, when you do this, and what is our definition of success.
I think just to put a button on it, I talked to David Lesh, who I think is brilliant on all things Syria. He's met with Assad multiple times. He wrote the book on him, and he still believes the only way Assad is leaving is in a body bag.
But there's no military solution for this situation. That is what the U.S. has to understand. There's only going to be a diplomatic situation. He's not going to leave in a body bag, at least not in terms of the U.S. action. It's not going to happen. And we should understand that our role, the U.S. role can only be, and I said this back in the Iraq War, as a diplomatic effort and some way of having an arbitration there using the international community. There is no military solution.
It's clear that diplomacy has not worked.
We've got to go. We have much more time to talk Syria, many more days, I have a feeling, in our future. Jonathan Basil, thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate it.